Hi everyone. So today is our 10th class and today will be our final class as well. So far we've covered all the learning outcomes. All the lessons have been covered and the assessment criteria have been covered as well. So today, like I mentioned in the last class, today I will be mostly looking towards the assignment brief and providing you guys with guidance. So I think that will be helpful in understanding whatever you guys have studied thus far and connecting with it. And this will be more of a guidance session so that you guys can use this to understand the elements of how you could address the assignments. Okay, so this is the assignment brief document, and so here we have covered all these learning outcomes and the assessment criteria. So this is how your brief would start. So it's about a case study. So there will be two tasks, I guess. Yeah, there will be two tasks. There's task one, which is a report, and then the task two is a meeting paper. And all the relevant assessment criteria that would be related to the particular task are mentioned. So we will be covering those two elements today. Okay, so that is about today's session. Right. So I'm gonna explain you guys, like I can't tell each and every point as to how it should be done, but however, I'm gonna guide you guys through as to how you can attempt those in developing your assignments. Okay. So this is about a case study. So you need to first read through the case study. Um, you need to understand the elements within that. Always when you read the case study, make sure that you highlight or mark whatever the points that you think would be relevant to establish your answers, right? So first you would read your case study, because now this is about it's about some Seneca and Novartis Syngenta. So this is about certain suppliers. So whenever you draft your assignment based on the brief, based on the question, you need to make sure that you use this as an application, because when you use the case study and the organization provided, only then your application skills will be established, right? So that's one of the main requirements. So it's important. So read the case study well and try to understand the concept. Okay. They've also given a table here. So most probably this is for some sort of a calculation. So we'll further discuss how, we'll further address the questions. Okay. So task one, this is where your questions start. This is where your brief actually starts. So once you've read and understood the case study, now you have to read this in order to understand how you can connect with and start answering. Okay. So first is about a report. So you need to develop it in a report format, have a cover page, have table of contents, have an introduction and the assignment body where you can have different main headings and sub headings. Then you provide the conclusion, and after that your reference list. Okay. So this will be the basic structure, and then you can start answering each point. So first, it's an explanation of the sources of finance the so-and-so company could have used, and an assessment of the risks involved in the identified sources. Okay, so I'm going to explain you guys a technique as to how you should identify the key elements of the requirement so that you will be able to understand what is needed and answer. Okay, so in the first point, it's about the sources of finance. And then it's about the risk involved in the identified sources. So these are the two main areas. So when you explain the answer, you should be able to identify the key elements so that you can expand your assignments. So here the explanation they want you to address and answer is the different sources of finance of the company, that could have used and an assessment of the risk involved in identified sources. You identify the sources and then you talk about their pros and cons. So because you have to assess. So like I explained in the sessions we previously did, assessments, evaluations, critical evaluation. So these are elements that you need to be, these are warnings that you need to be very careful of when you develop your assignments. Okay, so here you identify and explain the different sources of finance, and after that you are supposed to do an assessment of the risk involved in the identified sources. For example, we studied about the different sources like short term, long term. So based on the case study, you should know what sort of sources of finance would support or be relevant to the so and so company, and then you need to assess the risk involved. To what extent are the risks involved in the identified sources, either it be short term or longer term. Okay, so that's about the section 1. Then you have the section 2, a critical assessment of the cost involved in managing global risk. So here it's about management of global risk. So you identify what global risk is, show some academic knowledge as to what global risk is, and then you talk about the cost involved in the global risk. So this is about an assessment. So you talk about the different costs involved in managing the global risk and how it could be managed. Okay, because there is a critical assessment needed. So you just can't in point form put, okay, these are the global risks and these are the costs. It's not the way you write. Instead, you should identify the global risks and you need to identify the costs and the ways in which it could be managed. Also, if there would be any problems in management, you could also highlight that because they are asking for a critical assessment. So you talk both sides for a critical assessment. Okay, that is point number 2. Right. The third point here is an analysis of the potential investment decisions and strategies available to the so-and-so company. Use the data provided to calculate the payback period and the accounting rate of return. So that is why this table is provided. So you need to show the calculations for the payback period and the accounting rate of return. So we've discussed about the payback period and the accounting rate of return, the formulas, the way it is calculated, examples, and the decisions and how to interpret it. We've discussed about all those things in the class. So you can refer to the notes and you calculate and then you come up with a decision. Before that, they are also asking for an analysis of the potential investment decision and strategies available to the company. So once you have read the case study, you should be able to identify and explain this. Okay, so the potential investment decisions. So you talk about the investment decisions in common because we've discussed about that, the different investment decisions and the strategies that could be suitable, and then what could be most appropriate for the organization of the case study. After that, you do the calculations for the payback period and the accounting rate of return, get the answers, and then you interpret it. Interpret it meaning you explain that. Okay, based on the number of years, payback period, you will get the number of years and months in which your payback will be done. So you get that, and if it is more, you interpret it. If it is less, you interpret it and you explain whether it's good or bad, whether the investment decision is good or bad. Okay, so that's about the third section. The fourth section, an assessment of the global environment decisions and strategies affecting the so-and-so company. Right. So here it's about the global environment decisions and strategies. So we've discussed about global environment, pestle factors, and so on and forth. So you identify those in terms of academics, and then you show theoretical knowledge, and then based on the case study, you have to assess about the global environment decisions and its strategies that would affect the company. So in which ways it could affect. So that is what you need to discuss. So you show theoretical knowledge there, and then you talk about the global environment decisions and strategies, which could be more adaptable to the organization. Any consequences you identify, you address that, and then also explain them. Right? So this is about, these are the four sections. So there should be basically four main headings, and then you should have the relevant subheadings before that. Okay, below that. So here the report should have a count of 2,500 words. It can go plus minus 10%, not more than that or lesser than that. And so the all of these areas, all of the four sections, you should basically cover in 2,500 words. Your if you're adding an abstract, it doesn't count to the word count, and your references doesn't count. Your in-text citation does, introduction does, table of contents don't. So make sure that you manage your word count accordingly, and always provide valid sources. Use a lot of references and provide the corresponding in-text citations wherever necessary. Extracting information, you should be able to properly paraphrase and write it. Use your own words to write. So these are some basic points. Okay. And one of the main important thing is in referencing the style that the awarding body uses. So here they go with Harvard style. So your citation and your in-text references should follow the Harvard style of referencing. Okay. So that is completely about your task 1. All right. Right, now let's look at the task 2. So task 2 is about meeting paper. So you can have the format you like in terms of a meeting paper. The formats are always like, different formats are available on Google. You could have a check on that. So here there are a lot of assessment criteria that's been there pointed, and you should cover basically if you cover all sections from 1 to 9, it would cover. And here it's a different section, right? So it's not related to the initial case study. So you are required to choose a public limited company on which to base your assignment. So you have to choose a public limited company. So you choose that and you provide a brief introduction of the organization that you have chosen. And you are advised to check with your tutor that your choice of company is appropriate. So you please do check on that, because they might have a set of companies listed as well. Prepare a meeting paper that can be used by company directors to assess their current global finance strategies. And you must include the following in your meeting paper. So it's quite direct. They've already given the points which you need to address in your meeting paper. So first, an analysis of the concept of globalization on global risk. So it's a basic analysis. It's about you define it and you show some knowledge, added knowledge onto that. What is globalization, the concept of globalization, and the global risk, the risk involved in terms of the global market, right? Second point, an assessment of the link between the concept of globalization and the investment process. So there are two key points here. So it's about the globalization and the investment process. So you briefly describe that under the section 2, and you're going to talk about the link, the connectivity between the concept of globalization and investment process. We've covered this in the first class itself about globalization and the investment process. Why do they invest? The link between developed and developing countries, the reasons for the movements, all of this has been discussed, right? The third point, an explanation of the factors affecting the global business environment. So here you talk about the factors affecting the global business environment. We've spoken about different factors, but always make sure that whatever you answer, it should be related to the public limited company that you are choosing. So that in that way you show application skills, right? So that's about the third section. Fourth section, an assessment of the impact of identified factors on national and multinational business organizations. So you have identified the factors on the third point. You've explained them in general. Now you're going to talk about the assessment of the impact that the factors you identified have upon the national and multinational business organizations. So you're going to talk about your local market and also the international market, right? The impact in the local and international. So that is about the fourth point. The fifth point, an explanation of the current value statement of your organization's business organization, of your chosen business organization. So we've spoken about the value, the importance of value, the vision and everything. So here you are going to first identify the value statement of the chosen organization, and you're going to explain on that, right? Then point number 6, an explanation of how your chosen organization achieve its values and a recommendation of strategies that could use to enhance that value. So you identify the value of your chosen organization. Now you're going to explain how your chosen business organization would achieve its value, in what ways they could achieve the value, and also you're going to come up with strategies in a way that how the value could be enhanced in context of your chosen public limited company, right? Then point number 7, an analysis of the strategic decision of your chosen business organization. So you've selected certain strategies in order to develop your value of the organization. So the next point would be an analysis of the strategic decision, whether it's good or bad, right? That is your analysis here. Then point number 8, an evaluation of the financial consequences of the strategic decision made by your chosen organization. So now that you've come up with strategic decisions which will enhance your values, and you've also analyzed it based on the understanding the pros and cons, now you are going to understand the financial consequences. How feasible is this? How financially feasible it is? If there are any consequences, if there are any barriers, so you are going to evaluate that what sort of barriers it could be and what could be done, right? And the ninth point is an explanation of risk mitigation techniques and an assessment of the suitability of techniques used by a named business organization to manage their global risk. Okay, I'm going to read this again. First, an explanation of risk mitigation techniques. Talk about that, like show academic knowledge. What are risk mitigation techniques? And then assessment of the suitability of techniques used by a named business organization to manage their global risk. So in terms of global risk that your organization has, you have to come up with suitable techniques that would be properly aligned in a way to manage the global risk. Okay, so you have to talk about what are risk mitigation techniques, identify the global risk, and then come up with suitable techniques in order to manage the global risk. So that is what will be covered in point number 9. So these are all the points that you should cover. So for a meeting paper, you do not need to have a table of contents but of course you have an introduction to the chosen organization, but apart from that, you don't have to. But rest of the things, and also you don't need to have a conclusion, but for the rest of the things would apply your citations and text references, the word count that you should follow, and then properly adhering to Harvard referencing style. All those things would work on, right? Again, this is 2,500 words, so make sure that you fit your answers within that, right? So this is about your assessment and brief guidance on your assessment, and I hope this will be useful for you. Any questions you might have, you can email and we will further discuss on that, right? Right. So thank you guys, and I hope that you all get through this, and all the very best.